welcome to the living room where we listen, learn, and live together. I'm excited to have you all back with us for another conversation. We've been having an amazing time together, and I believe that today's episode will be just as inspirational, just as transformational as the past have been. I've got my brother here with me today. He's a special friend of mine who has been going through an awesome experience in life and was kind enough to join us in the living room. I want you all to welcome with me and receive at this time, Chaplain Samuel Jeudin. Chap, how you doing, man?
Doing good, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to have you on. It's good to see your face. Although the listeners will just be listening to our conversation, it's good to see you. I know you've kind of been hunkered down, as it were, over the past several weeks, getting some good work done. But yes, man, how are you living?
Well, I'm living great. You know, nothing to complain about. It's been an awesome, wonderful, last couple of years, and last couple of weeks have been transitional. I feel like I'm living great.
Fantastic.
Living great.
It's awesome to hear that.
Sir.
Now, as the listeners will hear as we dive in, they might be wondering at this point, well, he's going through a transition. Everyone's going through a transition. What kind of transition is he going through that makes it so unique that we should listen to this conversation? So you recently graduated from Chaplain's training school for the U.S. military. Can you tell us what branch you graduated from and for, and how was your experience?
Yeah, so I graduated from officer training school for the Air Force, and that generally it's an 8.5 week program, but due to COVID, they shortened it 1 week, so it was 7.5 weeks. And the Air Force, they call it OTS. It's intense, and even with the COVID, the pandemic going on, it was still intense, but they kind of loosened up a little bit. So some of the things, I learned a lot of lessons. One of the things is it's not so much about what happens outside of you, but it's how you react and what you project. And then, and there was a whole lot of introspection while I was there. A whole lot of turning in and looking at myself, examining myself like I've never examined before, and understanding, things about myself. So with the officer training school or OTS, the focus is on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to develop competent and confident military leaders. And so in the OTS, you'll have lawyers who call JAGs in the military. You'll have nurses, doctors, dentists. You'll have people who are in maintenance and all sorts of things. It used to be that the chaplains and the medical personnel and the lawyers used to have their own OTS, which was called COT, which was only 5 weeks.
Okay.
But now they want you to have a close as possible real world experience, which is now why just last October they changed the program and made chaplains part of the extended, 8.5 week program.
Okay.
So I was there for 7 weeks and 7.5 weeks. And it was trying, man. It was trying, but it was rewarding. I mean, it was rewarding.
I didn't know that. I was under the impression that every person in your officer's training school were chaplains, but you're saying it was a diverse group of professionals who were in this training program.
Yes, sir. A diverse group. Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a step back. You arrive day one. I can imagine this is a fairly long drive, if not so much an actual distance and the time it took you to get there. Maybe just mentally you're saying, okay, I'm about to willingly, voluntarily enter into this season, this 7.5 week period. What is day one like? Did it meet your expectations? Was it beyond your expectations? And I'm sure day 14 and day 21 have their own stories, but what's day one like at Officer Training School?
So day one was just we didn't really have a formal orientation, but day one was getting there, parking your car, taking your stuff, and just going to where you're going to your room. Going to your room is pretty much like your station. Going to where you are. You have an assigned an assigned unit. So going to where your unit is staying. And so, you got this card in your hand, and the military training instructors or MTIs, they're directing you, at every certain paces, they're like, where are you going? What's your unit? And you tell them your unit, they tell you where you need to go. And that, and then you get in and you're there.
So while that's taking place, you're interacting with the MTIs, you've parked your car.
Mm-hmm.
Has it settled in yet for you? Like, based on the interaction, are they already treating you like you need to listen to what we say, go here? Or is it more hospitable? Like, okay, things haven't really started yet. Let's just get you to where your unit is stationed, and then it turns up. Or do you have a very real sense, okay, we're not, proverbially speaking, in Kansas anymore. It got real.
Yeah, it's like we're not in Kansas anymore. Like, you got to walk with a sense of urgency, walk with purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right from the get-go, you get out your car and it's straight to it.
So your unit, your station, do you have space to yourself? Are you sleeping in an individual unit and then there's a common area? Or is it kind of like, now I've seen a lot of military movies and military shows, so I'm trying to dispel a lot of myths, and maybe the listeners would wonder the same thing. Is it just a series of beds and everyone's in the same space, or you kind of have your own space to cool out and lay back?
Yeah, well, so where we had it, they had dormitories, and so we actually stayed in a dormitory and I had one roommate.
Okay.
And so that was good, because normally under normal circumstances, not to get into too much detail, but under normal circumstances, you have more than one roommate.
Sure.
But because due to the context of the pandemic that we're in,
sure,
they wanted to limit roommates as to limit transmission and things, or potential transmission. So one roommate. And my basic unit had probably about 16 members. And so we pretty much had a whole wing to ourselves, pretty much,
Okay. So we're going
to. One thing, I know you didn't ask this, but I just want to say that, they put a lot of thought into taking care of us.
Wow.
Physically, making sure that we were isolated enough, and that if there was transmission, that we would be taken care of.
Right.
And so I can't say how much I'm grateful to the way that they put a lot of thought into this, man. Yeah.
I think that's important to share, and that's important for us to hear, because as you mentioned, virtually every industry that you can imagine worldwide has been impacted to some degree by the entrance and rise and spread of the coronavirus. And so that the knowledge that the military is taking a vested interest and being very intentional for the safety of men and women is valuable. So I think it's worth noting and worth pausing to mention. So I thank you for sharing that. We're gonna go deeper and expand our conversation around what your actual experience was like in a little bit, but I want us to go back now, because this is not the beginning of your story. This is just a point along the way. This is where you are now. But let us know, man, where you're from. Where do you consider to be your stumping grounds? Where the roots at right now? Where does Chaplain Jeudin come from? And then let's just kind of work our way up to this moment, because I feel like no matter what transitional point a person gets to in their life, in many regards, it probably has some seeds in the past. And even if it's just blooming now, there's some story in our history. So, yeah, man, where are you from?
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Lived there for the first part of my childhood. Born of Haitian parentage. Both my parents are from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Mm-hmm. Immigrated to the United States in the 70s, and my sister and I, were both born in Brooklyn. Spent the first part of our childhood, in Brooklyn, New York, the Flatbush section, and the second part of our childhood and in our teenage years were spent in Philadelphia. So I claim Philadelphia, but a lot of times when I run into New Yorkers, they like, you never forget you from Brooklyn, and so I just tell people, hey, take your pick. But I claim Philly because that's where I grew up.
Okay.
That's where. But although Brooklyn has a very special place in my heart, that's my genesis.
Sure.
So yeah,
sure.
that's my best way to answer it.
Both New York and Philly as you know, by way of your own experience, and even for those of us who didn't grow up there, we know both New York and Philly, especially Brooklyn, that Flatbush area, there's a certain pride and a level of loyalty there.
Yeah.
You can imagine, coming from both places, that has put in you, by way of experience, a pretty strong DNA. I mean, it's not like you came from, you were born in New York, but you were raised in a small town, or you were, born in a small town, but raised in Philly. You've got two big city vibes or currents, as it were, kind of pulsing through those formative years. But let me ask you this. Did you feel shortchanged in terms of Haitian culture? Do you still feel like you were exposed significantly by your parents and extended family to Haitian culture?
Yeah. So my parents made sure, that they instilled Haitian culture, in me. So, I cook Haitian dishes. I speak Creole. My Creole isn't necessarily the best. But I'm, I think I'm pretty competent.
Have a conversation.
Yeah. I would say my Creole is probably like a B-.
Okay.
But
have you been to Haiti?
I just went to Haiti in 2018 for the first time ever, and that was an experience, man. It was awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you feel in any way? Did it feel like a coming home? Was there a sense of like, wow, these are my roots, or what was that like?
So we landed at the airport. It was my cousins and my aunt. We landed at the airport. It was a kind of feeling of coming home a little bit, because we didn't go through my dad's neighborhood, but we went through. So there's a neighborhood in Haiti called Delma, and each one of them are, if you would say the English is Delmas, it's spelled Delmas, right? Mm-hmm. And they each are numbered, right? So we went through the Delma area, but we didn't necessarily go through the number that my dad grew up in, or that district. But it gave me an idea of where my parents came from. Sure. So in that sense, it was like a homecoming. But where we stayed was kind of like, we stayed on a resort. We stayed on a resort, so we didn't really get the down home feeling of it.
Sure.
We stayed on a resort, and that was nice. It was it was good. It was a comforting experience.
Sure.
Enjoyed it.
I'm glad you had that experience. I think it's an awesome opportunity whenever a person whose parents grew up in a place different from where they grew up and lived, whether it's in the U.S. or outside of the U.S., whether it's in a person's home of origin or outside, just having that knowledge of where my parents spent their childhood, where they kind of cut their teeth, scraped their knees, got dust on their feet, as it were, and where they are now. I think it makes a significant difference for one's own self-understanding and identity. So that you have that experience is phenomenal. So high school years, what is it that, as a young teenage growing man, growing into a young adult, what's on your mind? What is it that you want to be when you get a little bit older? Are you kind of at a fork in the road yet, or what was on your mind at that stage in life?
High school, what was on my stage? So I'm a very social person, high school, what was on my mind was understanding my world, getting in where I fit in, and just being cool, just being cool with everybody. Okay. I was never the most popular. Everybody knew me, and so I was like, in a way, it's crazy, but I'm doing ministry. But I wasn't, trying to be a minister then, but the way I interacted with people, I was, with this group, meeting their social needs, according to my role, with this group, meeting their social needs according to my role, and, things like that. So it all kind of flowed. And that, and that was my mentality. My mentality was, be cool with everybody.
Okay.
And that was my, that's pretty much where it stopped.
So at what point did you sense a call to ministry and respond to that call?
I would say probably about 16, 17, in the 11th grade is when I first felt a sense, that this is where, God would have me be. I was thinking about, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a doctor? So a little backtrack, a little bit about me. Every boy goes through a plane and train phase, right? And growing up in New York and in Philadelphia, but more so New York, I had a fascination with the subway system, and my dream job was to be a conductor for the New York City Transit Authority, subway.
Right.
But as I got older, I realized, that maybe that's not, I don't know, maybe it's because I wasn't there anymore, but it wasn't something that was forefront in my mind anymore. And I just felt like a sense of God saying, what about my ministry?
Wow.
And I interpreted that to be pastoral ministry, So that was like the first time I felt the sense to ministry, the sense of a call to ministry.
Okay. And you ultimately went to school for theology, for ministerial training?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So a little back. So while I was in high school, and I told her that that I felt this call, to ministry, because my track was called College Careers at George Washington High School in Philadelphia, and she's like, "Praise the Lord!" She's like, "We got a young minister," and so that was that. And growing up, in an Allegheny East church, the only school I knew about was Oakwood, at the time Oakwood College, and so my plan was to go. And to as a matter of fact, when I was in high school, I thought that I used to tell people, that Oakwood was the only college, the only Adventist college in the world. But a friend of mine had visited, DC, and she told me about this other college, Columbia Union College, and I went down there to study theology. I would say after about 2.5 years, I didn't really, enjoy it too much. I just felt like it wasn't enough people. I came from a high school that had like upwards of 2,000 people.
Right.
And that was my experience, and I just loved the energy of the high school, all these different people. And I came to a college that had, I think at the time was like less than 700.
Okay.
So it was kind of like I made the best of it, but I didn't really enjoy it. And so I'm kind of getting probably a little deeper than you're asking, but while I was there, I ended up taking the time out from school altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped out pretty much, and during that time I, did a little bit of call portering, a little guerrilla warfare call portering.
Right.
Going door to door selling Christian literature, and then giving names to the church at the time was called church in Frederick, Maryland is called Unity at the time. Giving them names, Bible study contacts and things like that. So, that was an experience, for me as well, kind of a formative experience.
Okay. So how long is it that you are away from school?
I would say from the end of fall 01 and it's about 4 years. Okay. About 4 years.
And at this time, you're not even off the beaten path at all. So you're actually going down the right path, just sharing with us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah.
4 years away from school, you get this call to ministry. Mid-teen years, you're in school. It's not really what you thought it was going to be, so you take some time off. At this time, while you're off away from school, are you still feeling the strength of a call to ministry? Are you questioning that? What are people saying to you? Are people asking you, when are you going to go back? Help us to kind of get a sense of what the emotional space was like during that time. Or were you always clear, like, nah, I'm just taking time. I know I'm going to finish. I'm not concerned. Because there might be somebody listening or someone listening who knows someone who's in that space right now. And I don't know. For me, I've often noted that can be kind of a highly stigmatized space, especially maybe for a Black male who has started college but hasn't finished college.
Right.
People can often have this misunderstanding that this person doesn't know what they're up to, doesn't know where they're going. So what was that like for you?
So that time was a very interesting time because the guys I was with, the guys I was with, they weren't about higher education. They were more about like trades, independent work, You know what I'm saying? And working with churches and stuff like that. But my mentality was that I still had this call on my life, and I was still interpreting it to be pastoral ministry.
Okay.
And so you know, I know I cut hair, and that's kind of where I learned to cut hair.
Okay.
You know, so I was developing other skills that I had been interested in, making myself a more well-rounded, you know, individual, while maintaining, you know, knowing in the back of my mind that I was going through this journey. And even though at times, you know, I understood the mentality of, you know, the young men who were around me, I still felt like I was still an individual with an individual call.
Definitely.
You know, and so yeah, and I think that's important too, because no matter where you are in life, you know, you might be surrounded by people who are of a like mind on some level, you know, but you still have to maintain your individuality.
Wow.
Who you are. And so in the midst of that, you know, I say it was an interesting time because my parents were not really for it. You know, they were like, "What the heck are you doing? Like,
right.
You know, why aren't you in school? You know, why are you, you know, out in Maryland somewhere, you know, selling books and, you know, cutting hair and, you know, working for churches and things like that." And I was still preaching here and there and things like that. But I think it got to a point where they started to see how I was maturing, that they, you know, my parents, you know, my family kind of stepped back a little bit and were like, you know what, he's going to be all right.
Wow.
You know, and so that was my journey. You know, that was my journey.
That's so powerful. The idea that we can have a sphere of influence, a circle of trust, persons that we are tracking in maybe the same direction as, but that doesn't mean we have to lose a sense of individuality.
No, sir.
And purpose that is germane to who I am, to my personality, to my temperament, to my unique calling. Because there's something that I think is, and I'm not trying to philosophize here, but I think there's a certain level of mystery to one's individual call experience.
Yes, sir.
So that there might be some commonalities, like for instance, you and I can connect on being around that 16, 17-year-old space and saying, I think this is where I'm being led or being called. But the circumstances of each person's growth into that call are different. So I'm glad that you were able to have that embrace from your family, which it makes sense. I think a lot of parents would be able to agree that if their child is, or their young adult son or daughter isn't necessarily pacing at the time or speed that they want them to, it can be a little unsettling.
Right.
But to have that moment of recognition, which says, and I love it, he's going to be okay. And that did come to fruition. You were okay where you were with what you were doing.
Right.
And then there was a turn where you now enter into pastoral ministry.
Right.
When did that happen? How did that happen? Was that before finishing school, after finishing school, at the same time? Catch us up with that.
Yeah. So I think I had no plans of going back, which is crazy. While I was in this hideaway, you know, this time out from school, you know, I knew that God still had this ministry for me, you know, and I returned home. Got home in 2005. I returned home, and you know, I still kind of felt, you know, the call to ministry in my life. But in the meantime, it was like wintertime. And so I decided to start looking for a job, and I got a job at the time it was Office Max. I don't know if Office Max is still around. There's more also Office Depot now.
Sure.
But I got a job at Office Max. They had opened up a new branch in Philadelphia. And I was working there, you know, working $10 an hour, the most money I had ever made in my life, you know, and because it was a new store, you know, I was racking up overtime, and, you know, my checks were coming in at more than $1,600, you know, a month, you know, and I'm living at home. I'm not paying any bills. And so in my mind, I'm like, wow, you know, I'm stacking, man. You know, I'm like, and the manager is saying things like, you know, you can, you know, you can make so much amount of money if you make manager, if you do this, if you do that. And so, and I'm working logistics associate, which is pretty much, and I was working at nights and things like that.
Right.
And I was, I was enjoying it because I was making money. And so that's the path that I was taking. And I think that I had sipped the tea at that point about, the amount of money that you can make if you stick with this and make a career out of it, and that's where I was, and I think I started to debate about the call. I remember debating about the call.
Right.
Like, man, yeah.
I'm making this money.
Yeah.
I don't have to pay bills. So
Yeah.
Kind of sit tight a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, was there a person or an experience that kind of came to you at that moment and kind of put you back on the path, as it were?
Yeah, my mother. She asked me about going back to school, and I was like, well, I'm gonna pay off some debts first, and then we'll see about that. And she was like, no, you're going to school.
Mom knows best.
I was like, not, I'm not, not now, I'm not ready. This is like the summer of 2005. And so this is funny. So I had a friend who one of my best friends in life. He attended AUC. I think you sang with his sister in the Orleans, Sybil Pierre.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So her brother was at AUC. He's like one of my best friend in life.
Okay, sure.
And so my mom was like, behind my back, she goes and gets and calls AUC and gets an application and just kind of fills out what she can and says, hey, here, fill this out. I'm like, I'm not going back to school, but okay, I'll fill it out. And I filled it out, mailed it in and stuff like that. And in August, I was back in school. I only had 2 more years left. And by that time I was like, what the hey, just go through it. And even though I didn't really feel like it at the moment, but I went through with it just to get my parents off my back. Cause they're like, you're living at home. I know, you're working and you're offering to give us money, which they didn't take any money because they didn't want to establish that, I'm paying rent to be here and get me comfortable. They wanted me, to stay focused. And I think that's what pretty much got me back on the track of focusing on ministry.
So you go to AUC, Atlantic Union College.
The former AUC, God rest the dead.
Yep. Shout out to all the AUC alum.
Yeah.
Still live though. The memories are still alive.
Yeah.
Precious memories. So you finish AUC, you go back, and before we go on, just a huge shout out and a word of affirmation to your mother.
Yeah.
I do believe in maternal discernment, that there is a certain insight and wisdom that God can give to mothers who are connected to him.
Without a doubt.
And really mothers in general. I do think that there's something insightful that mothers have. So shout out to your mother. Amen. Thank God for her and for that very critical moment in your life. So graduation takes place. What's next for graduation?
Yeah, so after graduation, or by the time graduation came around, after because I only had 2 more years left, just a few more credits. And by that time I was like, I was back in the mentality that, okay, this is for me. So by the time that last year came, I'm like, yeah, I'm going straight to seminary, after this, I'm going straight to seminary and I'm going to get, my MDiv and continuing in that path.
Sure.
And, I went to seminary, made a whole lot of new friends and things like that from Andrews University, from the different schools and stuff like that. And, I enjoyed it, I enjoyed it while I was there because I guess it was, the socialite in me, being around more people, and I enjoyed the time at AUC. I really enjoyed it because I had a close knit group that I bonded with, and I was older. So I didn't really need to be around a whole lot of people.
Right.
When I got to Andrews and, a whole lot more people, larger school, I felt kind of refreshed until it started snowing. You know how that goes.
I definitely know how that goes.
Yeah.
It's not Greek. It's not Hebrew. It is the winter that is trial by fire. That is what maketh a man, maketh a woman out of you, whether undergrad, graduate school, seminary, those winters. Man, they'll make you pray. They'll these for real.
Yeah.
And I think this is around the time where we first met. We weren't in seminary together. And I don't know if this was during your time in seminary or if this was after seminary for you with Pastor Hurst.
Yeah, so that was after seminary. So I went to seminary in the fall of 2007, finished in the spring of 2010. I could have finished in the fall semester of 2009, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to put too much on my plate.
Sure.
So I finished in spring of 2010. And while I was there, Pastor Claval Hunter had been working with Pastor Hurst.
Right.
And Pastor Hurst, being the kind of man that he is, always wanting to look out for someone who did not have a call yet, wanted to give somebody an opportunity. Asked Hunter, if he knew anybody. And Hunter was like, yeah, I know this guy named Sam. And straight out of seminary, I went to work with Hurst. And I was going out in the community, going door to door, not only offering Bible studies, but offering like services that the church had, the food giveaway and things like that, Southeast Seventh-day Adventist Church, other service, various other services. And, out of that, we did get some Bible studies. We did get people coming to the church. Did get some soul winning and things like that. And so that was like, man, this is awesome,
Right.
And I really enjoyed that time. And, Hurst he just let me be me, he just let me be me and let me find my niche in ministry and just let me be me. And that was really encouraging to me to see because I've heard of the stories of, senior pastors who are very territorial about, the ministry. And I thank God that I didn't have that experience.
Sure. And Pastor Hurst, having had the opportunity to minister under his oversight as well, not in that kind of capacity, but having invited me to speak for him and having gone to school with his daughters. And, I tell him this every time I see him, thank you for feeding us at Camp Pitch.
Yes.
He knows his way around the kitchen.
Yeah.
So I can affirm and agree with you that Pastor Hurst does have a gift of being able to let young preachers be themselves, to help them develop, to nurture them.
Yes.
And there's some other names that we could mention who have been next to Pastor Hurst. And he's a large guy, tall brother. So literally and metaphorically in his shadow.
Yeah.
I'll never forget one time, Pine Forge, just a little story. We were singing at Hilltop. This is when he was pastoring the Hilltop Church in Columbus. And he preached a sermon based on Mark 10, blind Bartimaeus. And the sermon was called Radical Praise. And, Pastor Hurst, as animated as he is in the pulpit, bringing that passage to life, just a very impressionable moment at a time where I was kind of still discerning a call to ministry, and just to see that, and then to follow that and have the chance to interact with him was awesome. So you're right. It was after seminary. We met and connected. You were working with Pastor Hurst, and then you make a transition south. This is from Midwest. You've done time in seminary. You're in Cleveland at Southeast with him. And how do you get back south? How do you get south to South Central?
Right. So I think you and I met actually while I was still studying at seminary.
Okay.
I came down we met at Pelk.
Okay, got you.
Yeah. So while I was there, Thanksgiving, Hurst, gave me a little extra, gave me a little extra to go home with my family, to be with my family.
Right.
And Wow. I got to give you this backstory. So he gave me this, this check. It was 500 and I think it was 50 something dollars, right?
Okay.
And I was like, man, praise the Lord, man, And before I even stopped home, I stopped by the bank, PNC Bank, and dropped my check off at the bank and received the receipt. And the receipt said $269, something like that, available. And I looked at the receipt. I looked at the lady and said, hey, ma'am, I'm sorry. I was kind of scratching my head like, man, I was almost 300 something in the red, not even knowing.
Wow.
And so I went home, and that was Wednesday. I went home. No, that was Tuesday. 2 days later on Thursday in the morning, or no, I lied. That was Tuesday. And on Thanksgiving 2010, in the morning or early afternoon, I received a call, a 615 number, and I'm like, who would be calling me from 615? I only knew of one person at the time who was living there, who was like, doing music ministry at one of the churches there, right? And I was like, well, he would call me from his cell phone. I mean, not from a landline or whatever. Right. So I listened to the message, and it was Elder Edmund.
Really?
Who was the president of South Central.
Right.
Now I had interviewed with South Central twice before. Once in 2009, they had an immediate need. I was not finished. I was not done yet. They hired someone, and then again in 2010. And again, they went another direction. But what I remembered is when the first time that they had that need, they were the only conference that sent me a letter and said, hey, we know the guy has a call on your life, but we're going in another direction now. And I looked at that letter and kept it and said, you know what, this I know for a fact that God has a place. Yes, sir. Even though it was a letter of, hey, not you, not now, I was like, I'm going to use this as my confirmation.
Yes.
And so it was weird how it worked, but I took that. I didn't take it as rejection. I took it as a, hold on till later or whatever.
Right.
Interview with them a second time, it didn't work out. And then Brother Taurus Montgomery.
Yes, indeed.
Who was also a really good, we developed a really good bond at seminary, called me that summer of 2010 while I was still in Cleveland. And just called me to see how I was doing. He said, hey, man, if South Central gave you a call, would you? And I was like, man, I would. But that was a summer. Someone else got hired. I put it behind me. It was moving along. And so that Thanksgiving, when I got that call, I was like, wow, look at God. And It was Edmund. He was saying, listen, we have 3 positions, and we're interviewing 3 people, and we want you to come down. So December 10, 2010 was the day that December 3rd, 2010, I interviewed, and then a week later, December 10, 2010, I got the official word, that I was coming down to be a pastor. I was like, I know nothing about the South, but I was like so elated, man. I was happy. They told me I was going to So and Laurel, which was some of the best folk in the world.
Really?
Even how it happened, Elder Edmund's parents were charter members of Southeast.
Okay.
And so he knew pretty much everybody at Southeast. And so that, that opportunity of working with those people and working, especially, I have a heart for our seniors and stuff like that, working with the seniors, and working with the young people, just working in the community, not knowing anything, just being me, and God opened that door. And it was just like a time where I really was grateful. I mean, like gratefulness flowing from my heart, as the song says, and that's how it was for me.
I remember this conversation is bringing back a lot of memories. I can recall.
Yeah.
Anytime we would kind of connect during that window, and hey, what's it looking like, and me in prayer. And so I do remember when they gave you that call, extended the call, and when you told me, hey, listen, Rich, man, I'm going to So and Laurel, and okay, New York and Philly is in your blood.
Yes.
And now New York and Philly is gonna have to get some Mississippi in his blood.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How long did you end up ministering in Mississippi?
My official start date was February 12th, 2011. And my last Sabbath there was like May 2017. So about 6 years,
Wow.
Yeah, 6 years, and I would say out of those 6 years, 4 of them were like some of the best years in ministry, and 2 of them were kind of rough, but it was more rough because I was being rough for myself, just being rough for myself. You go through peaks and valleys and ministry, and I was like, man, I don't feel like I'm producing enough, and I was just inwardly just like being down on myself, and things like that. But those 2 churches where the people took, and I mean, when I say they take care of you, they take care of you. Like if there's a church, among our smaller churches in America, that I would pastor, if they gave me a choice of a church to pastor, under 100% to start with, I wouldn't change the script. I would start because it prepared me for everything. Prepared me for conflict. Prepared me for to receive love. Because they say you have to be humble to receive. To times when people care for us, we kind of make it feel like, oh man, you don't have to do that. But that church kind of taught me how to receive care as well. Not only give care, but receive care. How to be assertive, and be a good, strong leader that you need to be, And so I enjoyed those years.
So
yeah,
I want to ask a question because I find that, as you mentioned, in ministry there are peaks and valleys, and sometimes those valley moments, whether it's we're being too hard on ourselves, frustration just from the work, we're tired, perhaps has nothing to do with the church that we're serving. It could have a lot to do with the world or the society or even the community in which we're serving. My question is, for you, those 2 years you mentioned, were those when you first arrived? Were they in the middle of the 6 years? Were they the last 2 years of the 6 years? Where would you locate them?
So again, 2011 to 2017, 2014 was rough, and 2016 was rough.
Okay.
So I would say more towards the middle and the end.
Sure.
The middle and the end, and I think towards the end, relationships were still good, but I think there was a natural restlessness because in our context we're moved every so
Sure. 3 to 5, maybe 6 years. Sure.
Right. And it was getting right around that time, and I felt like okay, I was asking myself, is my course through here?
Right.
And I felt like the members were, well, they would ask me. So one time, the president came to visit us, and a couple of my members, which was a good sign to me. They said, they jammed them up in the foyer. They're like, "You're not coming to move our pastor, are you?"
Right.
I took that as a good sign, that and he told me, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Sure.
But maybe I was reading things wrong, but I felt like maybe there was a mutual has he run his course here?
Sure.
And I feel like towards the end, maybe I had
right.
And it's not anything, I think it was just the members are expecting, and I was kind of like being tough on myself and feeling that, like comparing myself, comparing myself to others in ministry, and feeling that, oh man, I'm not doing enough, or am I enough? Just being transparent, and that was a year of I would say that was the roughest year, 2014, because I was really hard. I mean, I was hard on myself, man, like really hard on myself. You know, now looking back on it, I can say, you know, I recognize that, and I kind of use that to notice when and if I'm doing that again, and to check myself, you know, and to say that ministry is ebbs and flows. Everything is ebbs and flows,
right?
You know, ins and outs, ups and downs.
So you spent 6 years of your life with some amazing people down in Mississippi, the Deep South.
Yes, sir.
If you get a chance to share this episode with them, or if they happen to hear it, what would you say to them? How would you convey your feelings for them? What would you say to them in terms of any gratitude, a statement just in reflection? It's been a few years since you left them. What do you need them to know and hear from you concerning that time?
Thank you. Thank you for the love. Thank you for being more than just church members. Thank you for tutoring me. Thank you for helping shape me as a young pastor. You know, for my next assignment, which was also a great assignment, Tuskegee and Union Springs.
Okay.
You know,
Alabama.
Yeah, and that's where I just came from.
Okay.
You know, prior to this chapter, you know, it helped me read and understand personalities. You know, my time there at Soso and Laurel helped me get down. One of the most priceless lessons is it taught me not to be afraid of conflict.
Wow.
And to be, it taught me, you know, because, you know, as pastors, we don't like conflict because we know that relationships are currency. Right. And conflicts sometimes get in the way of relationships, which in the long run might hurt us in getting things done.
Right.
But I think that my first pastorate taught me not to be afraid of conflict. And so, you know, when you come into conflict, especially coming straight into a church, you come into conflict, you're more, I mean, regard for people, but without being a respecter of persons.
Sure.
And not being afraid, you know, being true to principles in spite of whomever is before you. And so, you know, I think that really helped me in my next assignment.
Right. So I follow you on Instagram, and you've been very transparent over the past several months, maybe even a couple of years now, with your physical transformation.
Yes, sir.
On the regular, weekly, you are posting pictures of yourself in the gym, boxing, lifting weights, doing core work, jump roping, you name it, and not hiding the journey either. And you mentioned ebbs and flows, not hiding the journey where you felt like you fell off, where you were getting back on. This idea that transformation requires discipline and consistency and commitment and getting back up again. What is this journey of physical transformation taught you in terms of life lessons?
Wow. So the physical journey started, I would say, faithfully started. I mean, well, I got dedicated to faithfully in 2016, and that was because, you know, thanks to my mother, you know, who was a retired nurse. I had gotten the biggest that I've ever been in my life. I'm only 5'6".
Sure.
You know, and I had gotten up to 217.5 pounds.
Okay.
You know, my blood pressure was high. I mean, I was not hypertensive, but my blood pressure had been the highest that it had ever been in my life. You know, and I knew that stuff that ran in my family, hypertension, heart disease, high cholesterol, diabetes, all these things ran in my family. And so it started, you know, it started with just going to the gym, you know, and I say it started faithfully in 2016 because in 2013, when I was still in Mississippi, there was a gym that opened. So I had a Mexican restaurant that opened 0.3 miles away from me this way.
Right.
And a gym that opened exactly 0.3 miles the other way.
So it's a literal fork in the road.
Yes, a literal fork in the road.
Okay.
And I had been dedicated to the Mexican restaurant. And I remember praying. I was like, Lord, I don't want to go all the way down to Hattiesburg, 30 miles away to go to a gym. If only a gym opened up here. 3 months later, that gym opens up.
Wow.
3.3 miles from me. But then, while I was there, with everything that's going on in the world, the nation and stuff like that, we were still kind of fresh off of Trayvon Martin. That gym, the owner would play this radio station in the morning, just talk radio at a gym. You're playing talk radio, and the guys are like Rush Limbaugh light,
right.
Just spewing, veiled racist stuff. And, I went to him a couple of times and asked him, hey, could you play some music? I don't care if you play rock and roll. Several other people went to him, he didn't change it. So I stopped going to that gym. Thank God another gym opened up a little further down the road in another direction. So I started going there, started being faithful. And then my younger sister, she boxes, and she's the one that got me into to jump roping. But the life lesson that it taught me is sticking with it.
Okay.
Sticking with it. And being God made us like him in that we can make a masterpiece out of our mess,
yes,
just
sir.
like he does.
Yes, sir.
So I felt like my life was a mess. Like physically, my physique was a mess, and it was messing with me internally as well.
Mm-hmm.
With my heart and things like that, my hypertension. And so God was like, you have to take initiative and change this. Whatever you want, you have to change it. And so that's what got me on that journey, got me, really being dedicated to it. And so, and what it taught me is that once you're dedicated to something, you will succeed at what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And then, along the way, me being a fan of hip hop, I discovered I discovered this guy back in 2000, probably like 2010, while I was still at seminary, but I never really listened to him, but he said the marathon continues, the late Nipsey Hussle, the marathon continues. And I kept repeating that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Right.
And so I told myself that even if I hit a plateau, I'm stagnant in my weight management. I'm stagnant in my goals. Right. I'm working out, eating right, but nothing is happening. I kept myself that I will succeed in what I'm trying to accomplish. And that taught me in life and in ministry that, okay, even if you're not, like baptizing, like what you'd like to see right now, even if you're still having conflict with personality that you don't understand, if you keep being nice to them, keep showing the love of Christ, understand that this is a marathon. Right. If you keep praying for people, if you keep, doing things in the community, it's repetition. Right. Practice makes permanent. Yes. And so the health journey taught me that practice makes permanent. And so in life, I learned that practice makes permanent. Practice, being nice to people. Practice praying for people. Practice, going through it when you don't feel like it. Yes, sir. And leave the results with God.
That's profound. And I just want to let you know, and I'm sure I'm not the first voice that you've heard say this, but I want to add mine to it, that that journey that you shared was inspirational and still is. Tell the people, you're still 5'6", but what are you weighing now?
Well, I had gotten all the way down to 165.
Wow.
About 52 something pounds, but I did it over 3 years. I didn't do it quick because I knew that if I did it quick, the weight would come back. Okay. Right now I'm 170. So I'm still like, my goal is to get down to a good, so for the Air Force, I have to be I'm at my max 170. So my goal is to get down to give myself about a 10 to 15 pound cushion and still look, fit. Sure. But I made it all the way down to 165, man. And that was awesome, awesome for me.
So here we are back to the beginning.
Yes, sir.
You have necessarily and helpfully, and I think our listeners will see why that was necessary, kind of gone back to the beginning, hung out with you at different checkpoints and mile markers in your journey, because the new chapter that you have commenced recently, at the time of this recording, it's probably been a few weeks now. You've already mentioned to us, rather, that you completed the almost 8-week training experience, and now you have commenced your orders. And that this has come, I believe, at the right time in your life. It could have come earlier, it could have come later, but here was an opportunity. Of course, there's so much going on in the world. Again, at the time of this recording, we are in the midst still of a lot of questions connected to a global pandemic. And help us now turn this corner to what leads you, after almost 10 years in pastoral ministry, to now turn to full-time chaplaincy ministry in the military.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. And remember Dr. North?
Yes, sir.
James North, so remember our Veterans Day chapels that we would have at seminary?
Yes.
So at the time, everybody knows the Marines uniform, because it's like, to me, they have the coolest uniforms.
Right.
I'm sorry, Air Force, but they just do. The Air Force, the uniforms are so cool. The Navy, to me, had the second best. The Army, and I saw Dr. North in his we call it dress blues, his service dress, and I did not know that that branch of the military. So I approached him and asked him, hey, I pretty much guess it was Air Force, but I need some confirmation. And I said, hey, Dr. North, what branch's uniform is that? He told me Air Force, the Air Force. He served as a chaplain. I saw with the cross and things like that. He told me he served as a chaplain. He's a retired chaplain for the Air Force. And he asked me if I was taking Air Force chaplaincy. I said, no, not really. I just wanted to know, just being nosy, And so he commenced to kind of make a commercial, ad. Yeah. And so back to seminary, and I thought to myself, okay, maybe I need to have a fallback plan just in case if I don't, get into pastoral ministry. And I talked to a friend of mine about going that route. At the time, my friend was like, Sam, aren't you too old for that? Because the cutoff age for enlisted is 26. And when I found out that it was 26, I was like, okay, I kind of left it alone. Then in 2015, another mutual friend of ours, Chaplain Meade Adams, made the transition himself. And that got my attention, because it was right around the time where I was being rough with myself in ministry. Right. 2000, he made the transition in 2015, and 2014 I was just coming off a rough year, and in 2016 was going to be another rough year, And when I talked to him, and realized that the age limit was not what I thought it was, that's when it got serious. Okay. And I started to seek it out. I filled out an application the first Saturday night of October. I remember it like yesterday. It was like around 9 something. Church was over. Fellowship was over, and I got home about 9 something, and I filled out an application online. Got a call back Monday morning, and the ball got rolling. But just to shorten it, during that season, I felt like God intentionally slowed it down, and there were things that happened that slowed it down. You got to get endorsement from your denomination. So I had to get endorsement from the NAD, right? Adventist Chaplaincy Ministries. That process slowed down for reasons. I think my endorser was a Navy guy. He wanted me to go Navy. I wanted to go Air Force, and so that process was prolonged. Leave it at that. That takes about 3 months. Took a year and a month. And I was complaining sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, I was complaining, but in retrospect, or even while I was in it, I learned that God was saying to me, everything you do in life, you should not do it from a place of resentment, a place of weariness, a place of I just want to change. It should not be willy-nilly. I feel like that's why God was slowing the process down, because in those 2 years, 2014, 2016, I was motivated. Everything I did, I was kind of motivated out of frustration. Even the good things I did, and God was like, I've not given you a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And so from that point, I learned that everything you do, every decision you make has to be from a place of strength, a place of love, a place of a sound mind.
Right.
And so it wasn't until about 2018 well, 2017, 2018, when I really started enjoying pastoral ministry again. I felt like, okay, maybe I should give up this chaplaincy thing, right? But then I felt like God was saying, okay, because what happened was I just got moved, new church, new place, enjoying pastoral ministry again. And God was like, okay, but you still believe that you still believe that I place things on your heart, right? I'm like, well, I can't front with God. So yeah, a part of me still believes that you put that on my heart back in 2009 and then again in 2015, 16. But I'm enjoying pastoral ministry, right? Because I just got moved. I don't want to break these people's hearts and things like that. And God was like, well, if you really believe that I placed it on your heart, and now you're at a place where you're happy, now or a place where you're experiencing joy again, right? And this is me talking to myself. I said God, but this is me talking to myself. If you really believe that God placed it on your heart, you should do everything that you can do. And if it doesn't happen, then it's not the will of God. Wow. And so I went full on right about 2017, 18, and I let the chips fall where they may. And 2019, I got the call. That I had been selected.
Wow.
And it kind of broke my heart, man. It kind of broke my heart to bring the news to my churches. One of my churches was really, everybody was like not only supportive, but they were proud of me.
Wow.
My other church, they were some of the people were brokenhearted, and they took it rough, And the thing is, having two churches, I couldn't say that, announce it 1 week at one church and 1 week at the other church because the word would travel before me. So right. What I did was announced it live at one church and had a video recording for the other church. Okay. And it was rough, it was rough. Even for some of my leaders, it was a little bit rough because we were just getting to know each other. I had just reached that point where I started to have currency to do some of the things that I was, some of the visions that I had, and it was kind of rough, but I was certain that this was God's call for my life, and I had to reassure them that, hey, the work is not in one person. I'm replaceable. Right. I know that, both of these churches are special to God. And so God already has somebody lined up that's going to take this district to other levels. So I reaffirmed them about that. And I kind of say that, I have, this is my season to decrease now. Yes. God's preparing you for something, something more. God's preparing you to take it to another level. So I kind of, gave them that message of hope on my way out.
So when you arrived at officers training school,
mm-hmm.
over the 7.5 week experience, what was the most challenging experience or challenging component of the experience? It doesn't just have to be something you had to do, but if it was mental, physical, emotional, what was most challenging?
So again, the focus is to develop leaders.
Okay.
Competent and confident military leaders. I went in with the mindset of spiritual care for those who serve the country, serving those who served our nation. That was my, providing pastoral care to those who serve the nation. While there, though, it got kind of humbling. It had been years since I'd been in the classroom.
Okay.
And I was there with Dr. Myron Edmonds, and another brother, brother Ange Cuadio.
Okay.
We were there together, and they can attest to the same too. But it's when you're a seminary, bro, and you're writing term papers or essays, 15-page essays, 20-page papers, and you're getting back 92, 94. One paper I had my professor, she was a doctoral student. She gave me a 97, and she told me almost verbatim. She said, you could get 100 on this paper, but there's always room for improvement. So she gave me 97, and she said, you should take this paper and you should get it published. You should enter this paper to get it published, right? And so I came out of I had this reputation as this brain, you know what I mean? Of course, some of my grades didn't really, I was better than with my grades, because the discipline wasn't really there, right? But anyway, I left on this wave that I was smart, I was this, this scholar, people calling me doctor or whatever, right? And I left seminary on that wave. I got to OTS, failed my first paper.
Wow.
1-page paper.
Wow.
It took me 9 days to complete a 1-page paper, Rich.
Failed it.
And I failed it.
That is humbling.
Oh, my heart dropped. I self-doubt creeped in. Not creeped in. Self-doubt came in like a tsunami.
Yes, sir.
I was like, what have I gotten myself into? Am I made for this? Am I the kind of leader that, that this needs? My first test, I passed it, but I barely passed it because 80 was passing, and I got like an 84 or something like that, right? And I was like, man, I was starting to be tough on myself. That we have these things called GLPs, graded leader position, because everybody at OTS has to have some sort of leadership position. My first 2 leadership positions, they told me that, I can barely hear you. There were points where I couldn't tell if you were the one who was leading the exercise. There is like obstacle courses where you have to lead your team and, and things like that. They interpreted that as, you're not confident. And they straight up told me, you don't come off as a confident leader. You're not boisterous. You're not boisterous enough. You're not, in these exercises, it doesn't seem like you're the leader. And I'm like, wow, God, like, am I really not the leader? Are my leadership skills really that bad? And it made, I wanted the flesh in me wanted to rise up. And at one point it did, but I kind of, because they give you the opportunity to write, a response to things and stuff like that. But it made me realize that you have to get out of your comfort zone.
Sure.
And in some circumstances, you need to be assertive, even if you are trying to figure things out.
Right.
And that was tough for me to learn. But thank God by the third exercise, it's crazy because the first 2 exercises, I had gotten more done as far as objectives and objectives to the mission and mile markers of the mission, right? My third exercise, I did not complete one objective, but I passed with flying colors because I projected the kind of leadership that they were looking for. Wow. And so by that time, I learned my lesson, about that they wanted you to learn, that it's about how you project yourself, how, you have to show yourself that you're cool, confident, and competent.
Sure.
So, I learned that lesson, but it was humble. It was humbling getting there, mentally grueling.
So ask now the opposite question. Was there anything that you would characterize as the easiest part of your training, or something that came naturally for you, where you were saying that was humbling, that was difficult, that was an uphill battle, but this was in my wheelhouse, or this was easy for me?
I think just connecting with different people.
Okay.
Like I said, you had a basic unit that you were with, and I, got, connected with my unit, as a chaplain, giving out nightly motivational messages, as the morale officer. But then after the 2-week, isolation or quarantine period was over, I started to reach out and make friends from other units, and that really was naturally, that's my thing. It was natural for me to float and, make friends over here, make friends over there, and until this day, there's some I keep in contact with, and so that even our brotherhood of chaplains, we had 6 chaplains there, and it was really cool getting to meet these guys and things like that. So that was something that was like right down my wheelhouse. It was easy. Now,
I don't know if this is top secret information, but how was the food?
The food was actually better than I thought it would.
Okay.
The food, I expected it to be nasty. And I expected to lose weight. I did lose weight. I lost about 4 pounds while I was there.
Okay.
But the food started off, I mean, like, I was like, wow, the food is good. By the end, it was kind of like repeat.
Sure.
So, it kind of fell off a little bit. But
Sure.
overall, it was better than I thought it would be.
So I saw pictures of the end of the process where, and you'll have to help me with the language of it all. I'm not sure if it's graduation or when someone basically reads to you this information that is very important. What was, you can give me the language for it, and then also I want you to share with us, what was that like, having gone through those moments that were humbling, having gone through those moments of physical duress, when you are finally, your name is called and they're saying, hey, you made it. What was that like?
That was surreal. The whole time I was there, I kept reminding my unit, my flight, that's the basic unit in the Air Force. I kept reminding my flight, that, hey, guys, we're all here because we spoke. Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And in the Hebrew, it's the word yad, which means hand. And it's like, and not only a hand, but a hand that's working. Death and life are in the hand, or the power of the tongue. And they that love it, that is the tongue, shall eat the fruit of it. So in other words, we're going to eat the fruit of our words. And I reminded my flight, several times that, hey, we're all here because we spoke this into existence. God allowed us to speak it into. So we're eating the fruit of our words, and so we're going to be successful. We're going to get to the end together. And so at the end, they call it's called graduation, or it's called commissioning. The chaplains are direct commissioned, so really we come in already as officers. But there's some other ones. I'm not getting into the technicality of it, but there are others who are commissioned at the end. Okay. But anyway, I had not been administered my oath before coming to, and so I was administered my oath while there. And thank God, I had Chaplain Jonathan Runnels who administered the oath to me, and that was like just special, man. I mean, like, just taking it all in. I had gotten there through the initial shock, of failure in the beginning, of injured my back. I had my back was like pretty much injured for like 3.5 weeks while I was there.
Wow. Not
knowing if I was going to pass the physical tests. The day that my back stopped hurting, my knee was hurting. And I knew that I would make this physical test, but I thank God I got a 94.3 on my physical test. Could have got more if I pushed a little bit more on the run. But I was like, wow, praise God. And so it was a cathartic experience. Just taking all of that in and realizing that I spoke some things into the universe and they appeared.
So you are Chaplain Samuel Jeudin. You've already assumed your responsibilities. You're at your station. What kind of ministry are you providing to the Air Force as a chaplain? What is your responsibility as a chaplain? For those who, they might have heard the terminology, but they might not know exactly what it comes with.
Right. My responsibility is not right now learning. The phrase that keeps coming out is drinking water from a fire hose.
Okay.
And again, I want to thank God for two people in particular. I mentioned Chaplain Meade Adams, but also Chaplain Martin Lister.
Okay.
Who I've been in contact with, who in 2017, while I started my journey, shortly after I started my journey, he was doing his transition that I did not know about. We were in the same conference, and so knowing that he went ahead and constantly in contact with him, him pouring into me, Meade pouring into me, Myron and I and Kuadio and I, talking often, encouraging one another along the path, that started the path of learning.
Sure.
And so right now, what I'm doing, learning my responsibilities, learning my role, learning not only to be a shepherd, a spiritual caretaker, but also learning to be an officer in the military. Because the thing is about ministry, and this goes across the board about ministry. Mm-hmm. When you in the military in specific, in particular, when you present yourself that you are on top of your officership, that you are a great officer, that you know how to conduct yourself as an officer, it then gives you spiritual currency, and for you to be able to advise leadership. And so right now, my supervisor, he's shaping me. He's giving me the tools to be not only a successful chaplain, but a successful officer. So some of my duties will be running programs for the Airmen, running a ministry center, learning how the gears turn, or being the one who turns the gears behind the scenes, and that's what I will be doing,
Sure.
While I'm here.
Sure. Fantastic, man. As I think about our conversation, Chap, I think about how this continues to come to mind, that the Lord has seemed to pivot you at the time that was right for you.
Yes, sir.
At a critical moment in your story, it wasn't always traditional in terms of the sequence of time, but man, there was always something very clear in terms of messaging for you that let you know it's time to turn the page, it's time to turn the corner. And the aid of persons, from your mother to the chaplains whose names you've mentioned, to Pastor Hurst and several others, to seminary professors. And I'm sure there's a congregation of names that you haven't even spoken about, your churches in Alabama and Mississippi. And here you are serving the armed forces of this nation at a critical time, I dare say.
Yes, sir.
A critical time in this nation's history, a critical time in world history. Mm-hmm. And I consider it an awesome honor and privilege to catch you at this stage in your journey.
Yes, sir.
It automatically assumes that at some point down the line, we're going to have to check in.
Yeah.
I think that there are more pivot points coming and more revelatory experiences as you are really on the beginnings of this new experience as a chaplain. I want to end off really with two final questions, and I'll give them both to you to answer them. Okay. The first question would be, if you have a quote that you live by, what is that quote? What would that be? And then the last question that I want you to just send us away with in answering is, if you could send one text message to your future self, what would that text message say?
Okay. Wow. There's so many quotes. That's a real tough one, because I get quotes from things that I read. Mm-hmm. I get quotes, of course, from the book of life, the Bible, and I get quotes from music I listen to. I'm gonna start with books I read.
Sure.
Yesterday I had the opportunity to read from. I'm gonna say this too. I thank the Lord for being here, because the Air Force is really being progressive and proactive in creating the atmosphere where the airmen, the officers, can express themselves in light of what's going on in the discussion, dealing with the current situation with George Floyd and things that go on. And so there was a young airman, a white young lady, who had a book of poems called Helium. That she wanted me, that she wanted to read, but not, I don't know, for one reason or another, she wanted somebody to read it. And so she wanted somebody from the chapel to read it. And so I was tapped to read it. And there was one quote from that book. I don't remember exactly, but I've ordered the book. And that quote said, 2 million, it quoted a statistic. It said 2 million people die a year from dehydration. So it does not matter if the glass is half full or empty. Just be thankful that there's water in the glass and drink it.
Wow.
And that quote was like, wow, no matter what. And that was from a poem called Complaining.
Yes, sir.
And then, I was like, that's just like, I was like, the little head bobble.
It hit. Yes, sir.
That'll preach. And I was like, man, I'm going to use that. That's powerful. Mm-hmm. Because so many times life, we look at, I'd like to say that I look at the glass half full. Just drink the water.
Yes.
You know, somebody, if you're looking at the glass half empty, drink the water. Stop complaining. Stop analyzing. Drink the water. The second quote, I would say, comes from music I listen to. And this also comes from, the late Nipsey Hussle. He said, run the marathon until your lungs hurt.
Wow.
You know, or get on your marathon until you bruise your feet. And that means, like Paul says to me, run this race and run it hard with all that you have. You know, dedicate yourself completely and totally to God and to your goal. And my third quote is probably my favorite verse, that says, I'll skip my favorite verse and I'll go with what an a former church member texted me this morning, Micah 6:8. He has showed thee, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of thee? But to love mercy, to do justice, and to walk humbly with thy God. And this morning I just woke up after I looked at the text message, getting ready for the day. I kept on thinking, love mercy, love mercy, love mercy. Even more than do justice. I usually focus on the do justice part, but I was like, what does it mean to love mercy? It's one thing to be merciful for one reason or another, but you have to love mercy. And that's what stuck with me today. And so that's the third quote that I would say, love mercy, do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Yeah. The other one is, if I could text myself, my future self, I would just say, remember to be confident from day one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Yeah.
We have been in the living room with Chaplain Samuel Jeudin, Chaplain of the United States Air Force. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to this episode again. I almost want to guarantee that you did not glean as much as you will glean by repeating this episode again or sharing it with someone. There were some major life lessons that we were able to capture in words. We were able to put some phraseology to it, but there's some that you will be able to glean just by listening to some of those stories again. And here in the living room, our mission is to listen and learn. That's right. So that we might live. And I thank you, Chap, for the lessons that you've allowed us to glean from your story, taking us back to the beginning, allowing us to walk with you to this point in a story that's really not done yet. We hope that you will be able to meet your future self and find him, yes, you being confident on day one.
Yes, sir.
Our hope here in the living room is that the prayers that you're praying, the dreams that you're dreaming in God's time would be answered and would come to pass. We want to thank you for joining us in the living room and continue to serve well, serve strong. And we believe God's going to bless you tremendously.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I'm really, really grateful, man. Really grateful.
Tell the people where they can follow you on social media, if that's all right.
Yes, sir. So Samuel Jeudin on Facebook, Jeudin. And my Twitter is SDOT Jew, and my Instagram is Jubilee Free. It's a play on my last name, Jubilee, because I believe in living life free. Sure. So it's JEUBILEE free at Jubilee Free.
All right. And you're welcome, man. Not a problem at all. It's my honor. It's my privilege. I'm glad that you consented. I literally, for those listening, I caught Chaplain Jeudin right between leaving and arriving. In fact, I think you were on the road. I said, man, could you please just come talk to us?
Right.
And when we release this and launch this, you will know, and I think the people are going to be blessed. Share it with your friends, share it with your family members, even persons that you've mentioned. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. Well, family, thank you for coming to the living room today. I hope you have learned from how we have listened and whom we have listened to, and live. And until next time, when we meet each other in the living room again, may God bless you and may God keep you.